I'd like to welcome everyone who's joining us today. We only have 30 minutes, so we're going to dive straight into the discussion and give you some practical ideas that you can take away and start applying today. And we probably won't get to cover everything, all the questions that were answered. So what we're going to do is anything that we don't get to cover in this 30 minutes, we're going to take it offline and record our additional thoughts. And this will be placed on the Good CME website. I'm Celeste Kolanko, and I'm Managing Director of M3IME, and we are a member of the Good CME Practice Group. Stuart, you want to tell us about yourself?
Okay. Hello, my name's Stuart Crayford. I'm Director of Global Clinical Content at Answers in CME. I've been in medical education for a couple of decades now, and that's both developing content and managing content developers across a wide range of, I guess, countries, regions, and therapeutic areas.
Great. Thanks for being with us here today. Mia?
Thanks, Celeste. My name's Mia Hill. I'm Managing Director at Scientific Education Support, or SES for short. I'm here today, though, with my project management hat on. So I've been working in independent medical education for over a decade now and worked my way up through the project management route. So I'm going to be giving some practical tips on how I can help in that role today.
Super. Thank you also for joining us. And Trevor, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, so my name's Trevor Aukim. I work at Scientific Education Support as a Digital Strategic Director. I've been at the company for, I think, 4 years now. My main responsibilities are looking after the implementation of digital strategy and digital innovation across the company.
Super, and thank you for joining us, Trevor. And as you can see, we actually have people from 3 very different aspects of the CME world with us today. So I'm going to dive in right now and ask Stuart to tell us more about how you're using AI in your work.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess, like a lot of our audience, I was probably skeptical about using AI in medical education at first. That was back in 2022 when ChatGPT first became freely available to all of us end users. The content that we produce in medical education is very nuanced and very tightly regulated. That there isn't room for errors or any particular mistakes or hallucinations, as AI is prone to sometimes. But I would say that that was back in 2022. Now things have changed rapidly. Some of these tools have got significantly better, and as time goes on, I tend to make more and more use of them. And I think if I was to characterize how I use AI chatbots, such as I think Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT. I use it as a support tool to help me generate content because as a content developer, one of our biggest issues is that blank page, just staring at a blank page for minutes. And that could be anything. That could be if we're writing a grant, if we're developing an assessment question, or putting together a PowerPoint presentation. So it's really accelerated that time from going from a blank page to my first draft. But I think the biggest challenge would be, are we able to maintain quality while scaling up that creative output from our chatbots? And to give you an example, I would say yes, it's becoming more and more prevalent because my favorites bar used to be filled with a lot of different varied links, but now half of it are AI chatbots. And we will touch on this a bit later. What are our favorite ones and how do we use them? But just looking at it now in front of my screen, I've got ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Google, and Consensus. Now, they are all ones I would say relevant, probably relevant to medical education. But they all help me generate content in a wide range of different ways. And I'll just give one example before I pass it over, and that would be I guess reformatting medical content. if I would say one thing, it's I would strongly recommend using a closed system. This means maybe uploading your content first and saying to the chatbot, only use information in the attached document. I know AI is getting more accurate as we speak, but at the moment it is partly a limitation. I don't want to give it free rein to develop content. I like to know what sources it's drawing from. So the example I use is I had 10 abstracts from recent trials in breast cancer. I uploaded those trials in a rich text Word document, and I said, can you generate me a table with drug names, study titles, patient population sizes, endpoints, and some of the outcome metrics, and it allowed me to put that table together within seconds, which was great. It would previously it could have taken me over half an hour. The one caveat is you still need to go through that and you still need to check every data point. So it is useful, but you've always got to keep on your compliance hat to ensure that everything is correct.
So that closed environment, as you just mentioned, is really important. I'm just going to follow up 2 seconds. Can you explain again what that means? Because I think a lot of people might think that means it's a private system that's built. What do you mean here by closed environment?
Well, I've told the chatbot to just draw on the sources and the words and the content that I have uploaded. Now,
Yeah.
I guess there's that closed environment. There is also one where you can set, if you've got paid for uh, Chat GPT service, for example, you can say anything we upload is private. It will be boxed off and it won't be uploaded to the general Chat GPT and available to everyone. So if we are uploading proprietary data, outcomes, source material, our grants, we can put them into the one that's paid for and we know it won't go any further. So, I mean, that's brilliant if we're doing things on a company level. For medical education, a lot of information is freely available. We take it from the public domain. It comes from PubMed and a lot of the peer-reviewed journal articles and congresses that are out there. So if I've got that, I don't mind really uploading that to a publicly available chatbot because none of that is proprietary. I've taken that from a public source to begin with.
Super, super. Well, that's really a great explanation as to, I think we're all kind of feeling that, yes, AI is going to have an influence on the content generation suggestion. You've given us some great examples there. But I'm going to turn it over to Mia now because she mentioned project management, and I'm not sure that we always think about it from that perspective. So Mia, talk to us and tell us more about your experiences with AI in your day-to-day work.
Sure. So I guess following on from what Stuart said, again, in the project management space, AI is very much almost like a junior member of our team. It provides first drafts that we can then review and it speeds up our processes. So some practical examples of where myself and the team use AI in the kind of project management space is writing copy for flyers or banners or social media posts or any element really to market the education that we're doing. We would brief the AI with the dates of the event, the speakers, any key information that we wanted, and ask it to generate a first draft of the copy. The same with newsletters. A lot of our newsletters that we put out to our educational websites and actually on SES ourselves, our team use AI to draft the copy. So it can be really helpful there. You do still need to review it, like Stuart said, but I think when you're using it in non-medical situations, the accuracy is a lot better and it speeds things up even more. I guess a major pitfall in it is the tone of voice. And what I find is actually when I'm using it to write as the company or as the voice of our educational platforms. The tone is normally quite strong and good. Some members of our team use it to reply to emails. And for me, that's an area that I haven't started adopting it in yet, because actually then I feel like I'm losing the tone of Mia when I'm replying. And there's still nice, I believe, to keep that human and relationship side. And for me, that's one step too far. But I definitely use it for the voice of the company and the voice of our educational platforms, and to speed up the processes there. Content adaptation. Sorry, Celeste, you're going to ask me a question?
Okay, no, go ahead.
No, you can go for it.
Well, no, I was going to say that's really very helpful, especially how your project manager are using it. But I'd kind of like to back up a little bit and ask you now to put your managing director hat on for the company, and tell us a little bit more about your feelings. It seems like you're using it quite a bit, but did you always feel that this comfortable in using AI? And tell us a little bit more about your story there.
Not at all. So I am a renowned technophobe. I am not au fait with all of the intricacies of AI. Hence, I've got Trevor on the panel with me. But I think how I've got into it has been with support of the team. So definitely Trev has been the one kind of innovating and giving examples of how AI can be used, and the it's got so many ways it could be used. I guess my role as the managing director is to interrogate those and look at how they can be used within the processes of the company. So what we do a lot at SES is actually monthly brainstorms where we come together with heads of different departments, and Trev will kind of brief in, these are the latest updates and capabilities. We'll have a champion go away and pressure test that. They'll report back. And together we'll see, okay, is the time now to integrate this part into our processes, or actually maybe not? So an example, about a year ago, we were looking at using it for literature reviews. And as Stuart can attest to, that was just going out and into an open environment and asking it to update our needs assessments. We were coming back with all sorts of citations that just were not accurate and not appropriate. However, fast forward, now, if we do the uploading of the citations, like Stuart said, and use it in a closed environment, we're getting outputs that are much more accurate. So yeah, I think that's my kind of role as the managing director, is how do we successfully implement it into the processes? And that's the way we've gone about it at SES.
Super. And it sounds like you've got a really good partner in this here. So I'm going to turn this over to Trevor, because it sounds like he's been a real guiding force in what you folks have done at SES. So Trevor, tell us your story.
So I would say, 8 to 10 months ago, AI was very much a novelty and a kind of nascent emerging technology. And over time, its capabilities increased. And because it's very much in line with our discipline of coding, a lot of its early skills kind of gravitated towards the things that we do. So we found very much in the last 6 months that things have moved on very quickly. We went from not using it very much in our daily practice to it becoming an integral part of our team. We use software called Cursor, which has all of the large language models embedded in it. And now we work daily with it on all of our projects. It's been pretty revolutionary for us. What would have taken us weeks now takes us days. We can prototype in an hour. So on the pure technical side, it's very, very exciting. In many ways, it means we can scale up. We can have virtual employees now and agents and people working with us simultaneously. And we can provide briefs to these systems and they do the work for us. And then we review and we work into it, very much like the content development team. But beyond that, we've been quite aggressively kind of producing various R&D pieces and introducing various technologies across the company. So we've built collaborative multi-platform chatbots for the team, where they can switch between ChatGPT and Claude, and then we provide like preset briefs. So for example, to Mia's point about creating social media posts and literature searches, we're trying to create our own internal platforms that do that work for us and give us consistent results. So instead of people just freewheeling and doing their own thing in their own style, we'll itenerate and develop company processes and documents that we can all share together. So we have this kind of collective kind of movement where we're all moving in one direction and like on the same page when it comes to the technology. So yeah, it's been very exciting last 6 months to be working in this industry.
And that system as well has been so helpful for kind of novice people moving into it like myself, where having the preset briefs which have been pressure tested, and we know, okay, if we say this exact wording into the AI platforms, we will get the results or the optimal results out that we were looking for in the starting place, rather than 50 people in the company all doing that and working solo to find the best outcome. We've kind of done that work up front, we've got the brief, and then it goes into the system and we know that we're all happy with the outcome that's coming out the other side.
Yeah, it sounds like with Trevor's help, Mia, you went from being a, as you say, technophobe to almost being a power user at this point in time. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I definitely use it a lot, and I don't know that I would have had it not been for Trev and that kind of hand holding, but also with the rest of the team. I think some people are very natural at this, other people are less so, and I think just as AI gives us efficiency, that working together as a team enhances the efficiency of AI as well, and means you can adopt it much quicker and know what the best outcomes are. I think also the one area we haven't touched on is adaptation of content as well. And another area where we really use AI practically is to take one format of education and to switch it and turn it into another format. So for example, if we record an expert interview, we would use AI to extract the audio file to then upload it as a podcast, or to extract the audio and make a transcript of it so that the writers could then take that and summarize it into an article. And for subtitles, we use it to generate those as well. Trev, I'm sure there are other variations, but it really helps in terms of taking one piece and then making it available to different styles of learning.
Yeah, so beyond like traditional chatbots, we've been doing a lot of research in kind of supporting tools. So for example, a lot of our content creation on the video and audio side uses software called Descript, which is kind of like a touch point for many different AI technologies. So it's allowed our internal team to upskill and take part in activities they wouldn't normally have the capabilities to do. So our in-house designer is now our video editor. Descript allows us to take transcripted content and edit it just through editing text. And there's so much you can do with it. But yeah, we can export to different social media platforms, do captioning. I think it's a real tapestry of technologies and software that we're kind of adopting at the moment beyond the traditional chatbot kind of interfaces.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are really taking this and running with it, which is really, really interesting. Maybe we'll do a follow-up a year from now and find out what's worked and what maybe has not worked so well. And on that note, I think that, all of the individuals here with us today are utilizing AI in some way, shape, or form, and have had some really successful experiences. But as we look at this, we know that there's concerns as well. There's risks, there's pitfalls. And full disclosure, we took your questions as part of this experiment, put the questions into ChatGPT, and asked it to kind of categorize what these questions were. And of course, a lot of them came into what we would probably call risks and pitfalls that everybody is looking at. Things like compliance, oversight, hallucinations, those types of things. So I think I'm going to go back to Stuart again and ask him to tell us a little bit about risks and pitfalls that you're seeing, and maybe anything you've done to overcome, or maybe there's still things that you haven't been able to overcome as of yet.
Okay, well, I'll start with a question that was sent in. It's a great question too. It's what is the biggest mistake made with AI? And this encapsulates a lot of these risks and pitfalls. So from my perspective, from a content developer perspective, the biggest mistake is complacency. I say complacency, it could, for all intents and purposes, just be laziness. So like we're assuming that AI is always correct. I mean, I should frame it as AI is very precise. It can be super precise, but is it accurate? That's the thing. We've got to weigh up accuracy versus precision, and it's not always accurate. And as we've alluded to, it can be prone to hallucinations. So I think within medical education, that's the main pitfall. The information it's given us is not accurate. So at Answers, we fact check and validate all of our content, regardless of whether it's been AI generated by a writer, by anyone in the company. And I believe this is going to be true of most medical education companies. Everyone uses a fact checker, and I would say that the main workflow is it's written regardless of AI or a content developer or a medical director, but then it's sent to a fact checker. And in our case, it's then sent for review by maybe the course director or someone associated with that program who's a world leading expert in that subject. They're going to be able to spot anything that isn't correct from 1,000 yards. So that takes us over some of the accuracy issues. But when it comes down to the metrics, say you have an overall survival curve and it says 10.1 months, do we know if that's accurate? If AI gave us that, we tend to go out, we find that resource, and we put it a snippet of that source, of that original source, next to our content. So we have that in the draft. That was done before AI, and that's still done after AI. I'm still to envisage a situation where we don't do that because it's for compliance, really. It's to make sure that everything's correct. We don't want to give a wrong drug dose, and, and then that's watched by 1,000 physicians, and then that could actually have a real world implication. So having this triple lock of someone developing it, someone fact checking it, and then a course director reviewing it, it allows us to maybe overcome some of those accuracy issues that would result from AI. And I would say that the human oversight is essential, but if you didn't have human oversight, that would be the biggest mistake that I could make with
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for the examples. Trevor, I'm going to ask you, beyond what Stuart has mentioned, what do you see? Because you come at this as a slightly different aspect than us who are maybe more front-end users, so to speak. What pitfalls or risks do you see? Because you're dealing with this day to day.
So we don't have the same level of exposure from a compliance point of view, but what we do find is that these models perform really well on green tasks. So you need to get it right the first time. And the more you iterate and work into existing content, the worse it can get at times. So from a kind of coding perspective, we are doing a lot of work around detailed and constructed briefs for these projects that we work on. And we see that there is a lot of big gains to be made in understanding how to craft and produce content for large language models. So it's all about the quality and planning. I think our advice would be to kind of offset some of the risk is to kind of create detailed, structured prompts. I mean, even down to the level where you define a role for the LMM to start with. And then you build on that, and then you have granular step-by-step tasks. And always provide content examples wherever possible, because it will always pick up the nuances, the structure, the tone of that document. And that can obviously get you a long way, and it's a much more efficient way of producing content. And another key pointer, I think, is always, regardless of however well you believe yourself to have prompted or briefed the systems, ask them question. Is this an adequate brief? What other questions would you like answered before starting this project? And usually you'll get 5 to 10 questions that then need answering. It helps you identify those gaps, functional gaps within your briefing process. So I think there are always ways to make this better. And I agree with Stuart there. Hallucinations is an issue which can be mitigated to a certain degree, and especially, like to your point earlier around closed content platforms, having access to only the content that you supply, it makes a big difference. But yeah, I think prompt engineering and general upskilling for everybody is kind of a key thing to consider.
Super. And Mia, we're getting a little close to time, but do you have anything that wasn't mentioned that you see as a risk or a pitfall?
I think I mentioned it earlier on, but the tone, and I think losing the identity of the person behind AI. So just be selective and careful with how you use it so you don't lose that sense of self. One of the questions we had come in actually was on, is there a need for guidelines on how to use AI in medical education? I don't know that there's a need for guidelines that everyone can follow, but I think the way that we've employed it at SES has saved a lot of time. And I think a big risk is every individual of the company going off and spending all sorts of time putting in wrong briefs and getting it wrong or getting not the best output out of it. So I think working together to find the best ways for your company to use AI, and we have almost formed an internal guideline on how to use it and what the best practices are to get the outcomes that we as a company desire. And that will differ from company to company. So I don't necessarily think an overarching guideline, but that would be my advice. And finally, compliance has come up in a lot of the questions asked. How do you mitigate against compliance? We work in a really nuanced industry. Pharma has all sorts of regulations. IME and CME have all sorts of regulations. So I think just harking back to using AI as a helper and as a junior member of the team who also might not be familiar with all of those nuances. No one is at the start. Like Trev said, giving them that information, iterating the briefs, and the outcome will improve. But ultimately, like Trevor said, I am still at the stage where, particularly for compliance and for bias mitigation, we'll review everything with that hat on to make sure that it's as good as possible and hits the standards we need it to hit.
I think.
Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Trev.
I think just to reinforce that, I think for us, it's very much an evolutionary process, and we take very small conservative steps and make sure that the quality is where we need it to be before moving forward over
Super.
time.
So each of you have 1 minute to wrap up, but what I'd like you to do is give me one tip or one final thought that you'd like to leave with the audience today. Stuart, we're going to start with you. One tip.
Yeah, so one thing, let's say, I would say let's stay within AI's strengths. So use it to structure, revise, and summarize your content. Or if you're a content developer, yeah, rather than generate, new or novel or clinical content without close review. So to do this, I would say make sure you keep a document of your most useful prompts. Keep it in a Word document. You don't even have to organize them in a particular way. Just put them all into a Word document, because then you can use that to put back into AI and ask it to organize them for you. So if you've got some really useful stuff, you can have it all there. It will ready make you a prompt library, and I found that quite useful for me.
Super. Thank you. Trevor, 1 minute for one final thought.
Okay, I think we're in the very early days of this technology, and it's progressing at an exponential rate. And I think it's going to impact our industry in ways we can't yet comprehend. I think the key takeaway is to be open-minded and inquisitive and engage with the technology now, and identify its strengths and weaknesses, and just get comfortable using it, because we're going to be using it more and more as the years move on.
Super, thanks. And Mia, we're going to wrap up with you with your one final thought for the audience.
Really similar to Trev, get comfortable with it. If you are scared of it, don't be. Find someone in your team who isn't, let them hold your hand, work as a team to integrate it, use it in ways that have been pressure tested. And in time, I'm sure you'll add your own innovations to the mix as well as you become more comfortable.
Super. Thank you all. Well, thank you very much, Mia, Trevor, Stuart, and thank you for the Good CME Practice group for having us all today. We know that there was even more questions that we couldn't get to, so we'll be heading into a closed Zoom session after this to finish answering those questions. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a good day and a good week. Bye-bye now.
Right.
Bye.
So maybe I'm looking at these questions that came in. I think the only ones that we didn't really touch on heavily were the use of AI in CPD accreditation. Um, Again, compliance, we talked about that. And I don't know, Mia, do you feel that you want to take that one, or do you
I mean,
care?
do I care? We don't really use it for accreditation. We've started toying with using it for pre and post test question development, which I guess is an element of accreditation. And Stuart, I think you've mentioned in previous conversations you've used it for pre and post tests
Yes.
and like outcomes assessments and that side. So I guess elements of it, but the actual
Yes, we do
filling in
use it
the
for,
accreditation systems.
again,
haven't.
I guess to facilitate that first draft, because I would never let AI develop me a question and then put it in without
Yeah.
checking it. And we our answers have someone who checks all the questions and all the outcomes. So before anything goes anywhere near a learner, we've checked it 2 or 3 times to ensure that that content's correct, and then it's passed by a course director who has spent 30 years treating patients with these conditions. So they will know immediately if that question rings true, if it's suitable, or if there's a sometimes AI will give an inappropriate distractor to to a question so that it's either not relevant or it's too easy to guess or it's too similar to the correct answer.
So on that note, though, Stuart, please finish your thought. That's about your content checking, because I have a follow-up question on that for you.
I guess it all feeds back into the question, what is the biggest mistake that is made? The whole issue of using AI all feeds into the one big problem, and that's what's the biggest mistake made, and that runs throughout the content development process, and that's trusting AI without validating its responses. If I do use it to develop questions, then I have those questions checked. We have a specific question checker who will go through all your answers and ensure that all the questions meet the required outcome targets for every grant, and then it's sent back to our course director for them to ensure that the content within the questions is both accurate and relevant to the program. Um, as long as we do that, we ensure compliance. And I feel that this does come back to where do we use AI within that content structure? If you're using it for strategy, and this was one of the questions that we have, uh, is AI best used for strategy or is it best used for research? Picking one, I would say research, because strategy, if it gets the strategy wrong, it can start you down a path where your particular program is non-compliant to start with. Maybe you focused too heavily on a supporter's particular drug, you've missed a drug out, you haven't quite balanced your topic correctly, and you won't know this until the end. So I would say be careful when using it for strategy, because that will make your program non-compliant. But as long as you check all the boxes, pre 2022, before AI really existed for us, we did do all of these things. I feel it's our job and it's our responsibility to keep doing all of these things, even though we've got access to AI and it can make our lives easier.
Yeah. And so I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to ask you, Stuart, and maybe Trev, you can chime in after this a bit too. I agree 100% that we do need to have the checks and balances, and we have to continue to go through our processes that we have right now with, editorial review, fact checker review. But is there going to be a point, we do have human error, because let's face it, we've all seen content that has gone through the traditional processes that maybe missed, something along the way. Are we going to get to a time where, and how quickly maybe is that, the AI will also end up being our fact checkers as well, and will do as good a job, and maybe some cases better, than the human fact checker. And this goes back to that whole research versus strategy type of thing. Are we going to get to a point where the research aspect is so strong that we're not going to need quite as many checks and balances, physical human checks and balances?
Sorry, go on.
Shall I start?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well,
go.
I would love for that to be the case, because it would make my job a lot easier. However, I guess well, a good example would be, um, I was reviewing some slides today. I had the publicly available chart and figures on the screen. I know that particular study was updated recently at ASCO, and they gave some updated results. Those results are behind a paywall, essentially. I don't know if AI has access to some of them, and that's
Mm,
when it can be a bit difficult. As a human, we know to go out and we know how to find them. We may have to order that particular reference. We may have to pay for it. Is AI able to do that, or will it know and then be able to tell us that we need to maybe do something else, go further, and there are additional steps to validate our content. Um, until that time, we will keep doing it the human way, with fact checkers and with uh, human validation.
yeah,
But given the progress that AI has made so far, I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that one day it will do that. And I say one day, it may not be in the distant future. It could be
yeah.
within 18 months.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to your point, it might mitigate some human error along the
Mhm.
way. But you also bring up a good point that if things are behind paywalls, you're not necessarily going to get the latest information. So that's another pitfall or check that we would probably need to be aware of. Trev, what are your thoughts on this?
Actually, yeah, because I see things slightly differently. That what we're describing is a current like limitation of the systems that we're using, right? So what's happening behind the scenes in the background now is that we're moving into an agentic era, and it's not actually hit the public yet. So what we're talking about is autonomous agents now who work independently and or teams, and you can connect them and create entire company structures, and each of them has their own responsibilities. So within that framework, you can actually give them access to your computer and you can watch them use the internet. So they see what's on your screen. They have access to your logins. You can brief them, give them access in the brief. So I don't see a reason, well, don't know what the time frame is, that won't happen. And ultimately now we're capable of building multi-agent and LLM entities. So you might have one that does the initial research, but then you might have a team who then validates that data. So it's going to scale up. It's not going to be a conversation with one chatbot in the future, I don't think. But I guess ultimately at the end of the day, the question is, will human counterparts ever be comfortable outsourcing and delegating that level of responsibility, or will it always, be considered a non-compliant activity?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges there. Mia, do you have any thoughts on this? Basically, where is our human interaction going to end, or should it end? I think right now we're all in agreement that right now we still have to have a very high level of human interaction to check and validate everything. But I think
No,
Trev brings up a good point that even if the systems might be able to do this, are we going to be able to accept it as humans and as educators?
I mean, I can't speak from a scientific or a digital side, but project management side, I think, again, I think the best metaphor for AI is being a junior member of staff. And I think over time, they will get better and better and better and better. And over time, you trust a new member of staff more and more and more and more as you work with them, and as they produce quality outputs time and time again. For me, and Trev, maybe you'll counter this and say, oh, but it can do it. I guess I'm thinking of a scenario perhaps where we have AI do an initial timeline for us, and then a speaker throws a spanner in the works and can't meet something or do something. The human would be the one who knew that fact and would have to give it to AI to redo the timeline, right? There's not going to be a time where AI would also be able to see that fact, or maybe they can. Maybe it will be a time where they scan through the emails and they do it all. I don't know. I'm just wondering those nuances that like maybe humans would have to keep doing. It's a very theoretical.
They are the problems that are being solved now. These multi interface connected pieces of software, and if you look at how Microsoft position themselves, they're large investors in OpenAI. So whenever you're chatting to them, you're chatting to ChatGPT. It's been integrated into Teams. All of their software is slowly bringing in these helpers, and I think you will start to see end-to-end processes and workflows that allow you to do a lot more, and it will be monitoring various communication channels. Timeframes, I don't know, but yeah, I think it's going to happen.
The possibility will happen.
Yeah.
So I guess then coming back to comfortable, like I am probably one of the least comfortable people, as I voiced earlier, but I have become comfortable, and I think it just goes back to what I said. It's that using it and iterations of it. And I think, like all of these things, if it produces the results and time again, there may come a point where we do all trust it and think, oh yeah, it's bulletproof. But like we've spoken to throughout the previous webinar, it's not there yet, and we are still fact checking, and hopefully we'll spot less and less and less and less over time, and there will come a point where it's more and more useful. And there may be a point of time where we can detach completely and say, yeah, we trust you on that, off you go.
Off you go, yeah. I think, you know, obviously we don't have all of the answers today, but, you know, we do see this evolving very quickly. I see a couple of questions here left that I don't think we addressed maybe as fully as we would have liked to in the 30-minute webinar. But one question came in, and Trev, I'm going to direct that one to you. When will Gen AI exceed the expertise of even the top experts in a field?
And do you want me to read my response to that question? Because it took quite a long time to craft that, because it was quite...
That would be great, yes.
Okay, so I'll dictate word for word there. I said, I don't believe anyone knows for sure that this is even possible. When we were asking that question, we were referring to some sort of multi-skilled AGI, so artificial general intelligence, excelling in roles that combine specific intuition, potentially with social or emotional intelligence, which take into account personal experience potentially built up over decades. So we're like, this isn't just about, that question isn't just about processing and reformatting content, right? It's something else. Yeah. And I guess my question off the back of that would be, how do these systems leap beyond training data and the limitations around that? And how do you measure that as a benchmark? And the counterpoint to that is, at the same time, we are already seeing that happen in my industry, and it's in very specific use cases, right? So where it's excelling and replacing people's jobs and exceeding their capabilities in bounded tasks, right? So this is narrow expertise. So like coding is a really good example of that. It's a discipline that requires lots of very pattern heavy repetition, like predictable kind of activity, right? So on the narrow skill side, I think that's already happening. So it's already peeling off pieces of responsibility from existing experts in the field. And you could argue that when we're looking at the advances in medical diagnosis and machine learning, we're seeing more and more platforms come out that are having a higher hit rate at diagnosing lung cancer and other diseases using these machines versus the capabilities of consultants and HCPs. So to a degree, it's happening, but not in a linear fashion. It's kind of like it's a layered onion of things.
Yeah. So, yeah, and maybe to your point, if I'm summarizing what you're saying here, that there are some areas where generative AI will actually exceed and become better than even the experts, but probably there's other areas because of all the other factors that are in there that
Yeah.
it will always remain a tool, and that we
Yeah.
will have the experts. And to be honest, I'm kind of hoping that that's the way it is, because I do think you know, don't want to lose the humanistic
I think that's a
effects
really good
of
point,
us there.
actually. And Trev spoke to it, and it was the thing which pricked my ears up, which was the emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of what we do in medical education is teaching doctors the facts. But there is that layer on top of how do you deliver those facts to a patient in an emotionally intelligent way. There are layers in our jobs where problems arise. How do you work with difficult faculty members, or you've upset someone and you need to solve a situation? There are areas, I think, where that emotional intelligence really plays a role. And again, Trev, you might say, oh no, it's coming around the corner. But for me, like I spoke to in the 30-minute webinar, that tone, that personal approach is something I wouldn't want AI to replace. And I don't think it should replace. Whether it can or not, I don't know. That's technical. But I think there's an importance of emotional intelligence and using AI, even if AI is a colleague at the same level as you rather than a junior helper in the future.
Yeah.
I still think that emotional intelligence and experience would play a role and be important to work as a
I guess there's
Stuart,
ethical considerations.
yeah. Stuart, do you have any thoughts on this? Will AI exceed the experts, or?
I mean, it's such a difficult question to answer. In some ways, it already has, definitely. In the way it can, I mean, the way Mia talked about it reformatting information, um, I use it to do that all the time. I upload my unfiltered notes that are just a jumble, a mess of information. I know it's all there, but it would take me a couple of hours to go through it and make it coherent. I can upload it. I can have it done within seconds. So it outstrips me hundreds of times. But that that nuance, that ability to be able to tell subtle differences, it isn't even anywhere close yet, particularly when it comes to very complex, difficult questions. And what would one of them be? It would be medical education. Or the nuance and subtleties involved in some of our content is is unparalleled to some of the other stuff that I've done. And I guess studying business academically versus studying medicine academically, I can see the difference in complexity, and it hasn't come close when I've been putting in information that I know what the answer is. I know what the answer is, and I'm testing it just to see if it can do it yet, because that's the way I know where I am and how far I can push the limits of AI. I test it with problems I already know the answer to, and sometimes it is the the gap is still quite large, but that gap is becoming smaller every year, and I've noticed that. And as Trev used the word exponential, I mean it could be next week that gap could disappear.
And Stuart, actually, that brings up something that I wanted to say in the 30-minute webinar, and we didn't have time to, as kind of one of those biggest takeaways actually is just because it doesn't get it right the first time, don't revisit that. Don't not revisit that. It's so quick that it's evolving, and something that you pressure test 6 months ago, if you pressure tested it again today, you may be surprised that actually it can do it. So I'd say keep going back to it. Don't just dismiss something because it couldn't do it and therefore it won't ever be able to do it.
That's a very good point. A couple more quick things. One of the ones that I don't think we had time for, but I know people ask all the time, is what is the best practice on disclosing AI usage? Do you let planners or course directors know that you've used it, either in day-to-day, minimally, maximally? What about disclosures? Stuart, I'm going to start with you on that one because, from a content creation perspective, I'm sure you deal with this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It comes up. It comes up quite often, and I think now many companies add a AI clause in contracts and paperwork, and then on the front of their programs because it's a sensible precaution. It's akin to putting up a signpost in a car park to say that the owners are responsible um, for their own cars because that we're covering ourselves. But really, I guess the way that I use AI, I use it as a tool similar to PowerPoint, similar to Word, similar to Excel. It's helping me build that content, but that just having that program, just having PowerPoint isn't going to build that content. That's not that I'm the one building it. So it's a tool that I use similar to Google or the internet, and I don't
Yeah.
put anything on my program saying this program has been constructed with Microsoft Office and the internet, and so then specify my search engines. Um, at the moment, I don't think I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Now, Trevor will be able to tell us more than me. That may change with the onset of AI generated video content, where the lines are a lot more blurred and AI is a lot more in charge of what it's developing. But for me, the words come from medical journals and medical papers, so that's very black and white. That there's no role for AI in giving me those answers if they've been validated.
I think, Stuart, the word in charge is for me where I would implement a disclaimer. So I think when we're using AI as a helper in the background, we don't disclose that. We,
Hmm.
ultimately, we are still the ones who are responsible, and we are the ones who have had the final stamp of approval on that content, and therefore it is our content. And yes, we may have used AI in the background to help at various stages. One area at SES where we leave AI completely to its own devices is Google Translate. So our websites have got a toggle at the top where you can choose your language, and the website is automatically translated. Now, we all know and have used Google Translate, and we know that there are pitfalls in it, and it's not always accurate, and there are some nuances in it. And our decision to use it was actually, we believe it's going to provide more benefit to the learner than it is harm. However, in that situation where we are not sense checking that, we have got a very clear disclaimer to say this is translated using Google Translate and there may be mistakes. Please be mindful and get in touch with us if you find any. So for me, it's that element of control. I think when you're letting AI, and maybe based on our previous discussion, if it gets to a point where AI is, we trust it completely and it's doing its own thing, then yes, I would probably use a disclaimer to say this has been generated by AI. But right now, we're not using them.
And Trev, any other comments on that? Agree, disagree?
I agree. I don't really have anything additional to add.
Okay, all right. So one final question that came up is how do you use AI as the teacher and not just a content creator? And is that even possible at this point? Stuart, or I'm sorry, Trev, go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I was jump in. I think yes. I think we're all aware that kind of these platforms are great creative ideas and brainstorming tools. So they're great at setting out high level kind of macro views of various project structures and creating a framework for teachers to work within, which they're giving them additional ideas that they may not have had. But I don't think there's a component where it's generating the course modules and content for them. But I think that's kind of where I see it on that kind of front.
Okay.
I've got friends who are teachers. I previous life trained to be a teacher and have maintained lots of those friends. they are using it a lot for their lesson plans. So
Mhm.
they're saying, these are the objectives, these are what I want to do, come up with a creative lesson plan for me on how to impart this point. And then they take those, and a few friends have actually uploaded the structure of how they want the lesson plan, like fill in these components, and it's, yeah, they're using it quite innovatively there. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't use the same method in our industry, in medical education, to kind of come up with the lesson plan and that side of it. And like my friend says, you know, she will say, this is great, but it doesn't have a reinforcing activity. Can you build me one in? Or what would you suggest as homework for the children to reinforce the learnings? And I'd like to have a slightly different version for a child who is less able, for diversification. And apparently, I've not done it myself, but apparently it's really useful in that line of work. So definitely something to trial and see.
Stuart, any thoughts on this? Can AI become the teacher versus become the content creator?
For medical education and some of the content that we develop, not at the moment. I'm not saying that it can't, but I mean, when I've tried to outsource to some of the AI chatbots, there is still a gap between uh, what I expect, that expectation for what I would expect back is very different to what I'm given. It's never as detailed. It's always quite general, which is great. If I was a medical student, like, some of the information is really, really useful, but we tend to go out to a specialized audience, and our programs are short format, so we've only got 15 minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
we really drill down in some of the detailed content. So for those purposes, I feel it isn't quite there yet. So why don't we have this conversation in a year, and I may
Yeah,
have a very different answer, but
yeah,
not at the
Maybe
moment.
it's kind of, and actually this harks back to one of the other questions we had about, can it be used for strategy?
Hmm.
And I would say yes. I think actually what some of its strengths are those creative ideas, and um, even if it's not the right idea, putting
Hmm.
ideas on the table to help a creative brainstorm and help unblock writer's block or
yeah.
unblock ideas block. So maybe it can be used as the teacher in that kind of overarching bit, but the meat on the bones still needs everything
Hmm.
we've discussed previously, and fact checking, etc.
And I will chime in here at this point. When I read that question, also like you, Mia, being a former teacher.